when I think of addiction, I always consider the cycles, right? It's like there is a cycle there. And interestingly enough, everything that you mentioned with addiction, and as you were going through it, I was like, because like there's so much, there's so much addiction.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Absolutely.
And really, in some ways, like I think I am whatever such and such a thing. Therefore, I am gonna become such and such a thing, which is gonna reinforce my beliefs, which will reinforce the behavior. And like, yeah, a whole cycle, like you said, absolutely. Hi, welcome to another episode of the OWL podcast. We're your hosts, Itiyopiya and Magnolia. Welcome, welcome. Today we're talking a bit about addiction, right? I know there's the obvious addictions of like alcohol, substance use, things like that. But we're going to talk about a few other addictions and then what we can do to prevent them or what we can do if they come up, right? Because they come up,
Yep.
that's for sure. And so, just a word of caution, right? If this triggers you, and you want to continue listening, I recommend pause, right? You don't have to push through it. Absolutely. So pause, just take a breath, take a few breaths, continue, pause, etc. And if you want to use this as a self-discovery exercise, feel free to do that too, right? You want to pause it, journal a little bit, things like that. You have a lot of options, right? We don't just
Yep.
have to passively listen if we don't want to. There's a lot we could do with this type of material. All right. So addictions, there's different kinds, right? There's addictions to substances like alcohol, cocaine, meth, nicotine, heroin, prescription drugs, caffeine, marijuana, and others. There's process addictions, which is you're addicted to the process of doing something. So sex addiction falls under that. Work, exercise, video games, food, money, internet, or cyber sex, right? Porn, social media, television, and there are feelings, rage, fear, self-loathing, intensity, love, depression, judgment, the victim stance. Things are always going wrong for me, right? Those could be addictive too. Then there's compulsive attachments, seeking and staying with troubled people. So these are attachments to people or things, right? There's pathological giving, rescuing, becoming a hero. You can see how those fall under codependency somewhat. There's being addicted to intensity or drama or crises. I'm sure we all know people who always have something going on, right?
Yes.
And there, impression management. So being really careful of what you look like and how you come off to the world. There's codependency, co-addiction, and trauma bonding. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it's a pretty decently long list.
Yep.
Something I'll say with addictions that I've learned is it's on a spectrum. And so there's the more binging type of behaviors, and then there's more the anorexic type of behaviors. So you can see, and even just with addiction in general, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm going through like these phases where I'm binging on drinking or whatever, and now I'm going through a dry spell. Or with food addiction, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm eating all these snacks, foods that I really, really like, but now I'm gonna be good and I'm gonna stop and starve myself, create the appetite, starve the body, and then like it's gonna force me to be hungry, so then I'm gonna binge whether I want to or not, etc. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on there physiologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, huh?
Yep. Like when I think of addiction, I always consider the cycles, right? It's like there is a cycle there. And interestingly enough, everything that you mentioned with addiction, and as you were going through it, I was like, because like there's so much, there's so much addiction. Um, that. each one is tied to some way, maybe an unrealistic view of yourself, some kind of shame-based view of yourself. Even with the savior, the savior complex, being addicted to martyrdom. Like, why would you want to give of yourself to till you hurt yourself? Well, there has to be something you believe about yourself that deserves that. And so yeah, like I had mentioned previously, like addiction being a cycle of shame that, whatever the core belief is, that you will enact whatever must be enacted to confirm whatever that unrealistic, untrue belief of yourself is.
That's
And
so
when I say unrealistic and untrue, I'm speaking specifically to like when you say like somehow I don't matter. So somehow I'm not good enough. Somehow I'm a bad person. Somehow like these kinds of blanket negative statements about ourselves that keep us in a state of fear. Because you got to escape that. If you really feel that you are absolutely the most messed up, most disgusting person there is, you're gonna do something to escape that feeling. The body is in crisis. You got to escape that feeling. So the cycle of addiction is also a cycle of shame for me.
absolutely, yeah. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Absolutely.
And really, in some ways, like I think I am whatever such and such a thing. Therefore, I am gonna become such and such a thing, which is gonna reinforce my beliefs, which will reinforce the behavior. And like, yeah, a whole cycle, like you said, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Addictions are super common, right? And then there's clinical, I guess I like to look at everything as on a continuum. So I think that they can be clinically significant. So that means that like, yeah, you're 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 using whatever the substance is or whatever the addiction is, right? You're using and then you have these withdrawals and then you continue and then you're intoxicated and so forth. So there's that like addictive cycle in and of itself. But then there's also subclinical. So it's like honestly, there's a lot of denial that goes into that, right? Right? There's a typical, I'm not an alcoholic. Well, how often do you drink, Magnolia? Oh, well, I mean, I just like, I don't know, I probably have like a six pack every day, right? I mean, it's not that big a deal, right? My friend drinks like two six packs, three six packs a day, but I only have one. You're still drinking every day. That's still a
Mhm.
dependency, right?
Yes.
You have any other examples of denial or pervasiveness?
I was just thinking, how much heat will I catch for this? Because I was thinking about like all the people I know that are like, don't talk to me until I get my cup of coffee, and because it's not, and as you were saying, like you have the clinical and the subclinical, and I was like, right, everything for me also, it's like there's a spectrum of things because what is acceptable in society also dictates whether you see it as an addiction or not, right? Like having multiple cups of coffee every day, that's not seen as addiction. So when you said caffeine, I was like, that's right, because you can intake caffeine in the same way that you could nicotine. One is considered okay and one is considered not okay culturally. So that's something that like came up for me, but there will be denial because that's not so bad. It's not so bad. However, if you're grumpy and you're like really nasty to people first thing in the morning until you get your cup of coffee, that's something that we can explore. That's something that might be like we might need to explore that. And the chemical dependency, that one too, I think is something that it may not be able it may not be easy to have an awareness around being addicted to being angry. that chemical cocktail that your body gets, that promotes feeling rage or anger or sadness, that your body can literally become addicted to that, to those hormones that are being released. So those are the ones that came up for me.
I like that. Thank you for that. Yeah. It makes me think of like, I mean, we're both social workers, right? And so two theories that we really look at are person and environment. So that's what you're describing. I'm thinking too, like being Mexican. I know Filipinos have something similar too, and there's other cultures I've heard of, right? But it's like, you're here, eat. We love you, eat. We're gathered, eat. You're sad, eat, right? And that becomes a pattern in the family that isn't seen as pathological within the family, but when it starts to cause issues for the individual of like, I don't know why I'm always eating when I'm really sad. I don't know why I'm 400 pounds and things like that, right? I mean, we're not, these are just descriptors. We're not shaming anybody, absolutely. It's just bringing awareness to things that happen, right? And then what happens too sometimes is the systems that created that, the person in that environment, it's like when that person tries to break out of the addiction or the maladaptive behavior, it's negatively reinforced by everybody in that system, right? Everyone in that system is invested in the eating, is invested in the drinking, in the coffee, right? In those examples. And so, yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, it made me think of the Boondocks when they did the critique of that movie Soul Food, and like how there's a table full of food that is unhealthy, but everyone gathers around and takes in this, I'm just gonna say quote unquote unhealthy, because I think at some point like the food can be healthy, or okay enough. So yeah, like it just made me think of that, those critiques of how culture is influenced, or how culture influences the way that we eat, and how that also influences how our addictive behaviors can be expressed.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about how addictions develop. So then another theory that we have in social work that you're going to hear a lot about is the biopsychosocial spiritual
Mhm.
component of things, right? So biologically, we have different factors. We have what is your nervous system like, right? And then we inherit part of that, sure, like how were our parents' nervous systems, things like that. How fried was the mother or the birthing parents' adrenal glands at the time of being in the womb, right? Because if the birthing parent, the mom, is very stressed, right? And maybe had a really stressful life prior to conception, then they don't have their adrenal glands to function off of. They're going to feed off of the baby's adrenal glands. So then that's already taken away from the baby's nervous system as it comes out, right? And then when the baby comes out, the mom goes back to her nervous system, and then the baby goes back to theirs and their adrenal glands. But if that's inadequate, then that's inadequate, right? And so then they're going to have chronic stress and chronic dysregulation as it goes along. Then with the attuning in the environment, how much tuning is there not with the caregivers in that village or lack of a village in that child, right? The less we have, the more deficiencies we have in that regard, then the less resiliency that nervous system is going to have as it goes along. On top of the epigenetics already within the genes of like you're already prone to being dysregulated, you're already prone to being addicted or not, right? So those are some biological components of that. How much am I able to reset after there's a stressor? If my nervous system, all these things are already against me, then that's setting me up for failure really at that rate, right? And then we have the also biological pieces I'd say would be nutrition, right? And media. It's like all of these things do impact you physiologically. Are you listening, watching, hyper stimulating things all the time? Because that's going to dysregulate your system a bit more too, right? And the media too, the messages that you get, I mean, that's gonna land different types of ways too. And then the nutrition. Are you eating foods that are more inflammatory and that build less resiliency, or are you eating a whole diet? Because that's gonna be a protective factor. So we'll be talking about like protective factors versus things that remove or detract from the resiliency, right? And then psychologically, right, what kind of messages are you getting there? Some overlap with the media, right? But also, what are you getting from your environment? This is good, this is not, this is normal. You messages about you, about your environment, about values, really, right? And then we have religion too, that would fall into that, right? Or lack of religion that would fall into values. And then you have sociologically, yeah, put it that way, or socio-emotionally, right? So it's like, again, you in relationships. What kind of person are you? What messages are you getting as you exchange with other people? What messages are you not getting as you exchange with people? How relevant are you, right? How valuable are you? Are you only valuable when you contribute something to the group, right? And then again, like religion and media go into that too. And even social media, I mean, I know that's not something that we talk about. One, it could be an addiction. Two, and secondly, it can be helpful or it can be hurtful because you can be on there and listen to positivity. But if you already have genetic mutations that make you prone to overthinking and ruminating and things like that, you might be more likely to compare yourself to people that are on there. Why am I not this positive? Eventually is what it turns into, right? And then there's that shame spiral, and that can turn into an addiction cycle. Absolutely. And then we have the spiritual component of things. People who have less of a set core of values are more likely to be prone to addiction because, I don't know, there's this adage, maybe, quote, that says, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, right? And like, that's true. Like, if you don't, for example, if you're not like, I'm not going to be an addict because why actually? I don't even know. I mean, I have nothing going for me. Why not try it? Right? I mean, you can like blow with the wind. Mm. At the same time, there are some spiritual practices too that can even force you to use, right? And I mean, on the opposite end of that, we have cults, full-on cults that force you to engage in behaviors, engage in like drug use and different things like that. Yeah. Do you have any comments for that piece?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Um, when you spoke about the religious piece, it made me think of moral incongruence. And right, I'm like, we have so many terms for things. I'm like, moral incongruence is cognitive distortion and cognitive dissonance. All right, where there's dissonance, there will be distortion. That's just how or vice versa. They feed off of each other. And our culture is very big on creating so many opportunities to be in that place of moral incongruence. Like, why does someone choose to hurt or harm themselves when they want love? And that idea of like, you know, personal value, how am I valued? Now, me as a Black woman, I was taught a lot of different things around the value of womanness and the value of Blackness. And so like both of those being low on the scale, right? Women, what are women good for? Women are too emotional. They're not as intelligent. They're not as strong. They're weak, like they need the guidance of a man. Like these kinds of things were extremely pervasive in not necessarily in my home, yet in the culture. Like what women were expected to do and be was very dependent on um or very based in a second class citizenship. And as a Black woman at the same time expected to be able to take care of everybody. to have enough resource to take care of everyone while being inferior, insignificant, secondary, but necessary. Like I literally was told that um by someone way back in the day. And so like th that kind of incongruence, like how do I now value myself? How does my family reinforce the cultural narrative? How am I allowed to be authentic in myself? Me being like I always like to play with cars more than dolls. My mom will tell you like, oh, every time I bought y'all dolls, y'all would pop the heads off. It's like I because I wanted a car. And maybe not even recognizing that so much as a child, but like, oh yeah, because gender stereotypes made it so that this is what you're supposed to do. And then when you're displaced from that place of authenticity, then again, what's wrong with me? So all of what you said, like really brought up that thing for me of like the moral incongruence being that I have value, yet I don't think I have value. It's incongruence. Incongruence is chaos. That's how the body reads incongruence. That's how the body reads um, cognitive distortion and dissonance. There's no safety because your body, the mind, the brain is like, wait, hold on, what? And then the chemicals of the hormones get produced, and then the hormones. Now we're in this place with the hormones raging, and I don't know how to be with this feeling. No one has created an opportunity for me to learn how to be with the feeling, be with my emotions. Let me go. Let me go check out for a minute. So all of what you said is, I think that those things are extremely important, and just highlighting also um, that all is not lost. Like, we are resilient in the way that repair can be done, and the prevention that also exists there with how we are with ourselves and each other.
Absolutely. Well worded, well articulated too. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking overall, if we could sum it up, it'd be like factors that lead to and or increase addiction would be stress, for sure. Lack of support, whether that's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual support, right? Not having people around. Feeling alone, being neglected, trauma, lack of, ooh, I can't read my wording. That's okay. Shame, incongruence, lack of nervous system resiliency, lack of coping skills, and lack of safety, right? And so essentially, what happens is we don't have enough direction. I mean, I know that we're in a really cool time period actually. We're coming up with a lot of research and we have lots of levels of awareness that we haven't had before, at least not in recorded history. And so one of those things is, okay, well, no one's here to organize my experience, to how I make meaning of things. When I have these feelings, people deny my feelings or people make fun of me, whatever. Fine, then I guess I'll just make it work how I have to make it work. And so that turns into maladaptive behaviors, that turns into coping mechanisms like addictions and things like that, right? Among other things.
Mhm.
And so yeah. I guess if you realize that you have an addiction or multiple addictions, really, I'll say that too, actually. Typically, if you have one addiction, you have multiple, at least. I mean, most people, really, I think most people have some type of addiction or like disordered behavior, right? Whether they've worked on it or not. And the more they've worked on it, probably the less it is. But like, I think we all have tendencies, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah. So you realize that you have an issue. I guess what would your recommendations be just in general? If you realize, oh shoot, I have these issues, like what do I do about them?
One of the first things that I thought of is like, well, there has to be a restructuring on on what you think about yourself and creating enough space for yourself to be in the process of like, okay, this is what it is and this is where I want to be. Now, that is that is something that I would never recommend someone do alone because we can be an echo chamber, and the stuff that is habitual, the stuff that the habits form very early, very, very early. Because like I remember reading some literature around like the age dropping. It's like going from like they said it was 12 years old, and now it's 9 years old, and it's 9 years old, now it's 7 years old. Like it keeps dropping because the foundation of what you believe about yourself is formed early from your early lived experience. And so those behaviors, that the behavior of thinking of yourself negatively, the behavior of believing a lie about yourself that is untrue, I think that that requires some level of support in like having authentic relationship, having professional support, those kinds of things. But definitely the first part is to kind of like, if you are aware enough of it, to say, okay, this exists. Consider that this might be based off of something untrue I believe about myself, is rooted in some form of shame or some lie about myself that I believe to be true, and then seek support.
Absolutely. So you're speaking to that mental piece, right? Like therapy or even a coach or something like that, or group therapy, anything like that, right? And
Hmm.
then we have the emotional components of things. So surrounding ourselves as best we can by supportive people who love us. I mean, we talked a little bit about love in our last episode, so there's a discussion on that there, right? But yeah, people who love us, who mirror us, who are attuned to us, who have our best interests at heart, but also who don't enable us, ideally. And then spiritually too, finding meaning in different areas. Somatically, being able to support ourselves too. So I like things like yoga. I like things like walking, weightlifting, dancing, because it gets you in your body, but it also helps you integrate things and it gets you connected, which is like there's a lot of dissociation, there's a lot of denial, there's a lot of disconnection when we find addictive behaviors, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those are,
And what,
go ahead. I was gonna say those, I think those are all really good recommendations. Go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to add on to the body piece. Like, there's so much that we can do. The breath is always there. And then the breath can also be activating, right? Like knowing how to breathe is important because some breath is done to activate while some breath is done to be more soothing. So being in that place of like acknowledging the body, like seeing how much you can just feel at the time. And maybe it's overwhelming to feel in the moment what's happening in the body. Yet, even noticing the air on your skin starts to build greater capacity to feel. I always go to like feet on the ground. What are you feeling? Feeling connections, like noticing the light. These things that, because you can notice the light whether you have your eyes open or closed, unless, of course, you cannot notice that because of whatever is going on medically. Yeah, just being present is a really big part of it, because the dissociation is a learned behavior. And when you're dissociated, you're more likely to be in habit, you're more likely to be in ritual.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think overall, I'd say notice, then work at it a bit, get some help as you need, develop your coping skills, get safe, right? I mean, are you engaging in some unsafe behaviors? Are you sharing needles with other people? That type of thing. And that's pretty obvious. And obviously, this is really hard too. I mean, it's if you have an addiction, you have been doing this for years, if not decades. And so it isn't easy. I'm not going to say it is. And also, it is so pervasive and it's so complex, much like trauma. And the more that you work on it from different angles, the more effective you're going to be over time. And any of these skills that we're covering, yeah, they can be coping skills in the moment. Like, I'm really dysregulated. Let me go dance. Okay. Or I regularly engage in a scheduled practice of dance so that my nervous system can become more buoyant and more resilient. Yeah.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking of my one of my homegirls, Alicia, sent me a video of like the dog walking through the mountains, and I just sat there and watched, just watched this video of this dog walking through the mountains. It was just so cute, and while I do understand that like whatever my experience is, it won't be the same necessarily the same experience for others, but there's so much that we can tap into now that allow us to have more space to be present, that allows us to tap into more awareness and presence and being instead of checking out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think some final thoughts I have on that are if you can get into a chiropractor, I mean, some insurances cover it, some don't, but if you get into like a chiropractor, like body work, massage, that kind of thing, that could be really helpful. Uh, Certain interventions like quantum neurology, applied kinesiology, neuroemotional technique, contact reflex analysis, those are all really helpful because they can really help to support the nervous system. And really, that's what they're working at is like making your nervous system more buoyant. Then you can tolerate things more. You have more capacity. When you're more regulated, you're able to be in your prefrontal cortex. You're able to think and plan and different things like that, right? Instead of just like operating off of whatever the automatic cycles are for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, do we have any other final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I this is my last statement here. I appreciate the effort that goes into changing behaviors. It can be challenging and it is not impossible. One step at a time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plenty of resources, plenty of therapists out there, plenty of content out there. I make a bunch of different I'm not gonna say playlists. Maybe they are playlists on YouTube on any social media platform that I'm on. I just have them there in case I do need them. I'm having a bad day. Oh, this is for dismissive avoidant attachment. Okay, this is for whatever behavior. It's helpful. You just have it there whenever you need it, right? Look at me when I'm sad. I have a playlist for that, right?
That's
Yeah.
nice. That's a great idea. Yep.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, stay tuned in. Hit us up with any questions, comments, anything you want to hear out here. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.